prison would be hard on anyone, but it can be a much harsher reality for the hearing impaired. The isolation and abuse within penitentiary walls often go unreported. In the first part of an Al Jazeera exclusive series, we bring you the story of one deaf inmate's attempt to navigate the justice system without being able to hear his own trial and his struggle to then survive in prison.
For a deaf person, you must see everything. You must protect yourself. Things happen in prison that you never know about. You never see. They don't tell you. You must watch out for yourself. Somebody have a knife, because the other prisoners know your family send you money. They want that money. If you have shoes, they want the shoes. They want everything you have. You fight for the shower. You fight for your food.
There's no question that individuals with disabilities in prisons and jails face a very scary life. We know from the research that's been done on the national level about prison rape and abuse that individuals who have mental illness, individuals who are elderly, individuals who have a physical disability or who have a mental disability are oftentimes targeted for sexual abuse and assault.
It's laughable because it seems so completely far out there, far-fetched, that we could be treating people the way we treat people in prisons, not just the deaf and deaf-blind and blind, but anyone. The way we treat men and women in the prison system in the United States is just terrifying. My name is Talila A. Lewis, and I am the founder and president of HEARD, Helping Educate to Advance the Rights of the Deaf. It's a nonprofit that focuses on correcting and preventing deaf wrongful convictions and deaf prisoner abuse.
Yeah, you can go ahead, please.
All right. Right now we have just under 300 men and women who are deaf, deaf-blind, hard of hearing in our database. The percentage of them that has been raped is well above 80%. Raped or abused in some manner. It's mind-blowing.
One man shower. I'm watching the door. Somebody's there. I don't know. He come in through the bar. He grabbed me. I'm fighting and kicking the ball. I'm fighting. I look like this. Another man coming in. Just reach him. Can't reach him. I pass out. When I wake up, there's blood on my face. He raped me. I shower, I finish. I come out, all the people were standing in the rail and watching. Go back to my room, all purple, they beat me. Go back to my room, I get up in the bed, I jog. I stay there 3-4 days. I stay out, move, nothing.
I met Felix in June of 1998. I got a package. A little note said, "This is a charity case, see what you can do." So I looked at the case, I started checking it out, and it just grabbed me. I said, that's going to be my son. I'm going to be his mom. I'm going to be that person for him, because he's been through so much without nobody. The box contains Felix's trial files from his 1983 trial. The attorney 3 times alerted the court and the state that his client could not understand, could not hear, and that he could not assist him in his trial, which is a Sixth Amendment violation. He didn't have an interpreter. He says, I didn't hear the testimony. He says, I didn't hear them say anything. So he did not hear any witness testimony. An interpreter most definitely would have changed the results.
When things happen to you like that, and you see the thing that's going on, it makes you question your Christianity. For me, it's strengthened me. Sometimes I fall. Pat is my... Let me tell you, if not for Pat, I'd be dead right now.
It is the picture of heartbreak. Jim Ridgway is a journalist who has dedicated his own attention and work to deaf inmates, and he joins us here. It is not just Felix. You have met so many others who are disabled, hearing impaired, deaf, who are left in isolation,
Well, yeah, you know, the thing is, most people don't realize that thousands, tens of thousands of people in prison are hard of hearing. I mean, all there is, you know, this yelling and back and forth in your, so that there is like almost an epidemic of people who can't hear right. And their hearing, when they get out, if they get out, doesn't necessarily ever come back. So,
for these guys who have lost their hearing, whether it was before they went into prison or once they're in it, it must be just terrifying to go through every day not knowing what's going on around you.
Well, Felix, you know, after he was raped, would get in his cell, and he was so scared that he would get down close to the ground and he would listen against the wall for movement, for the sound of movement or the feeling of movement.
Vibration.
Yes, the vibration. And what's so crazy about Felix is that when he was in trial, they gave him a hearing aid, and one person said that there weren't any batteries in it, and the judge said, turn up the volume. So, of course, when you turn up the volume for a deaf person, it doesn't do anything except produce noise. So, I mean, basically,
he was unable to defend himself.
There
was no way he could participate in his trial. How did you become so involved in the deaf inmates and their situation, their circumstance?
A long time ago, in the 1960s, I worked for the New Republic magazine, and I started writing about the deaf and in conflicts between people who were using sign language and reading lips, which then it was a pretty big deal. And so I met various people who were scholars in the field and kept some contact with them. And the only reason I was able to do anything with this at all was because one of the people that I had met and talked to he's now dead, but he helped me. I mean, he guided me, and he put me on to Felix.
Well, does the outside world understand how many people are deaf within prison institutions, and how many of them really are living in this isolation, in the terrible challenge of just trying to be able to communicate with the world around them? It's almost as though they've been put in a world with an alien language.
Oh, I don't think anybody has a clue. When Felix is in Florida prison, so in preparation for the article I did, I asked, you know, how many people are deaf in Florida? I asked the officials, and they said they didn't know.
They didn't know. Nobody tracks it.
No, they didn't know. And as a matter of fact, in the federal prison system, the best I could figure out is that they don't have any programs in place right now that deal with the deaf. And a warden who was experienced in dealing with deaf people said, look, the only way the deaf make it in prison is if they stick together. If they stick together, they'll help each other. But you know, a basic prison policy throughout the country is to break up any kind of friendships because they're afraid of escapes. And in the case of sign language, There are prison people who actually think that it's a code and that they're plotting an escape.
It's a very difficult situation for all of them, I'm sure. Jim Ridgway, journalist who's been covering the plight of deaf inmates, thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on America Tonight, we'll continue Al Jazeera's exclusive look into the terrifying world of the deaf and disabled behind bars. Stories of abuse and agony in this disturbing investigation.
They found him hanging by a sheet. It was the most horrible experience the most horrid phone call I've ever received in my life.
The deaf in prison struggling to be heard, their desperation for help, and what is being done. We'll have more of our exclusive series Friday on America Tonight. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joey Chen. There can be no more intimidating, isolating environment than the walls of our prison system, especially for those whose disabilities make any communication challenging. Even finding the untold stories of the disabled in prison can be difficult. Over the last few years, journalists from Al Jazeera's investigative unit have developed contacts behind bars and in the hearing impaired community to bring this important story out. Tonight, we begin with the second part of this exclusive, in-depth look at the challenges of the deaf and disabled in prison, with a look at the fair treatment guaranteed to inmates with physical and mental impairments, and we'll examine why the prison system so rarely delivers on those guarantees.
When individuals come in who have disabilities, these systems aren't prepared to handle them. They don't have the type of clinical support they need. These are not therapeutic environments. If you are disabled, these institutions aren't set up to deal with you, and no accommodations are generally ever going to be made for you.
My name is William F. Britt. I'm 39 years old. I'm incarcerated in this facility for a year for possession of a firearm. An impaired person, we will always get problems, more than a normal person, because we don't communicate as well as they do. Dealing with correctional officers, because they don't really know that you're hearing impaired. They call you from behind, and then you don't hear them, and they come and rush you, and I get attacked, and I turn around and I attack back, you know? I got a hearing aid now, but I need my charger, but they don't accept this charger in the facility because, you know, people can say that they can make bomb or whatever out of it, you know, but I'm not even beat for it, so I just leave that alone and just wait till I do my time.
My name is Robin Ahern. I've been here at the Philadelphia prison system for almost 7 years, working as a licensed social worker in mental health, mainly at the Riverside Correctional Facility. Deaf inmates don't have equal access to services that they need, and they just need someone to be an advocate for them. People who can hear get 10 minutes on the phone every day. On the other hand, a deaf inmate has to actually schedule an appointment with the city's social worker to get the TTY and talk on the phone. If they don't have communication with their family or loved ones, they won't feel support, they won't feel loved, they'll feel more isolated in the prison system. Right now, she lacks the sign language interpreter to complete a program that she needs to get early parole. So therefore, she's in jail longer than she really needs to be. It would actually save the state money to get her out of jail sooner. Having a sign language interpreter provided for her would be a good investment. It just makes it even more difficult to overcome substance abuse if you have a disability. If you don't have sign language access, in terms of therapy, group therapy, you're not going to get the support you need to stay clean.
I am the mother of Jeremy Thomas Sanders. Jeremy never got treated right here from the beginning, from the time of the arrest. While he was being held at the Lawrence County Jail, he never got a phone call or no Miranda warning or an interpreter. Jeremy told me he asked for an interpreter 16 times while he was at Lawrence County Jail. One week from incarceration, exactly 6 days, they found him hanging by a sheet. It was the most horrible experience the most horrid phone call I've ever received in my life. He was 42 days without a phone call. A regular hearing person is allowed to use the phone within 3 days. My son was denied use of a phone for 42 days. I want my son treated just like anybody else. I want him to have the same opportunity as a hearing person does. I want him to be treated equal in the eyes of the law.
Talila Lewis joins us now. She's the founder of HEARD, which is helping educate to advance the rights of the deaf. Appreciate your being with us here. Is there any way to know how many folks are deaf within the prison system in this country?
By and large, state and federal prison systems are not tracking how many deaf prisoners exist in each individual facility. So apart from HEARD's database, which we created, the first national database of deaf and deafblind prisoners, it's very, very difficult to tell. So some states have some numbers, but most states have nothing.
What is the need? I mean, shouldn't the ADA sort of cover this need for compliance within a facility, a state or federal facility?
So the ADA covers compliance of state-run facilities. The Rehabilitation Act is actually the law that applies to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. In either case, yes, language access services must be provided. It's unquestionable under both of those laws.
But as a practical matter, it's just not.
It's just not happening. And the larger issue is that everything in our prison system is so secretive, it's so hidden that people aren't aware unless you have a family member who's deaf in prison, unless you're an advocate or an attorney. And then there are also litigation laws, the Prison Litigation Reform Act, which was passed by our Congress in 1995, that makes it really, really difficult to sue as a prisoner.
You know, there are going to be people who suggest, look, some of these folks have been convicted of quite serious crimes, and so should there be an allowance made, should there be additional support for people who are disabled beyond what is required by the law in such rulings as we've talked about already?
Absolutely, and it's not additional, people would say additional favors or things like that. It's not that. What we're asking for is equality. So the fact that a deaf person can go into a prison, a deaf or any other disabled person, go into a prison and not receive access to basic services, we're talking medical, healthcare services, mental health services, access to mandatory classes that are required for them to even get out of the prison. Certainly, while security is an important factor in the whole prison complex, if you will, it's something that can be handled and has been handled time and time again with facilities that do allow interpreters, and the Powhatan facility in Virginia is the perfect example. Interpreters are present. They've handled security however it's appropriate for their facility. And so that's kind of more what we need to see. But I think the larger issue is that prisons aren't even looking to get interpreters in the first place. And many times, the reason that they're in prison is not because they necessarily are a bad person, but because the entire system failed them. They didn't have interpreters at the time of interrogation. They didn't have interpreters during court, and so on and so forth. And so we find that people with disabilities are disproportionately represented in the prison population, not because they're awful people or what have you, but because our system continues to fail them from A to Z.
We appreciate your helping to bring this underreported story to light. Thanks very much for being with us, Talila Lewis. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As Talila noted, the deaf and disabled most often don't get the support they need. But after a class action lawsuit, New York's prison system is now one of the very few making an effort to accommodate the deaf and hard of hearing. In fact, only one out of only 5 states that houses deaf and hard of hearing inmates together.
My name is Ryan Nathaniel Doring, and what I do here now is I work as a teacher's aide, and I like helping inmates learn. Because we have the deaf program here, a lot of the inmates, they try to be more sensitive. You know, if there's something going on, something important, sometimes they'll let us know. That way we're not feeling left out.
There are about half a dozen facilities across the state that can house our population. And our job here is to make sure that they've been identified correctly and that they don't slip through the cracks and go to any other facility other than those designated for persons with disabilities. I think it's really important to identify it immediately so that we don't set ourselves up for any kind of discrimination lawsuits, because it happened once and that's what created the program.
There needs to be oversight to find out whether or not these institutions are actually following our laws, like the Americans with Disabilities Act. Unfortunately, there's very little public scrutiny and oversight of these institutions in general. And certainly, an effort to do this on a local and national level would make a huge difference for disabled individuals who are now in our prisons and jails.
And the understanding is if you take that sign language class, it's not just out of interest. For some of these maximum security guys who've been working, let's say, for many years as an interpreter here, and now they're medium eligible, we try and get them to a medium facility that's designated for the deaf and hard of hearing so they can continue using that skill.
We need new and different solutions if we really want to make a difference. We need to ensure that these institutions treat people with decency and dignity and provide them with what they need to live a safe, secure life.